Psalm 105 verse 12 to 14, God is always with you, you're never alone. Psalm 105:12, when they were few in number, indeed very few, and strangers in it. Compared to other nations, the Hebrews were very few in numbers, but like their forebears they began to take possession of the land. Abraham was alone when God called him, as was Moses. We read in Isaiah 51:2, Look to Abraham your father, and to Sarah who gave birth to you in pain. When I called him, he was only one, I blessed him and made him many. HCSB, Abraham had 2 sons but he cast out one, now Isaac gave birth to 2, Jacob and Esau, and Jacob had even more, but some of them, instead of being in deference to him, exposed the family, as he himself cries out against his sons, Simeon and Levi in Genesis 34:30, You have brought trouble on me, making me odious. We are few in number, if the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites unite against me and attack me, my household and I will be destroyed. God's chosen are but a little flock, few, very few, and yet upheld by our Lord's hand and promise. The fledgling nations on the wilderness march were but few in numbers compared to the nations that they passed through, and by all appearances, everything was against them, nothing but the arm of God could have brought them through their difficulties, and given them a settlement in the promised land. Psalm 105:13 When they went from one nation to another, from one kingdom to another people. From the historic and archaeological records of the 40-year journey of the ancient Hebrews, we find that the land through which they then passed were well populated. Because they were strangers and appeared less able to help themselves, as a wandering group, they were more likely to be harassed or met with abuse. On top of that, their religion made them seem bizarre and eccentric to the heathen of the areas. And even though the whole land was theirs, yet they were far from being brawny enough to possess it. We read in Hebrews 11:13, These all died in faith without having received the promises, but they saw them from a distance, greeted them, and confessed that they were foreigners and temporary residents on the earth. HCSB. They went from one nation to another, from one part of that land to another, but the people of the lands could not weaken and expose them. Psalm 105:14, He permitted no one to do them wrong, yes, He rebuked kings for their sakes. Many had an axe to grind with the people of God, as they were probably aware that this was Abraham's offspring. Many would have been aware of God's covenant with the people, who also believed that they were the rightful possessors of the land. The text reveals 4 advantages that the people inhabiting the lands had against them. In the first place, the Hebrews were few. And more than that, since they were very few, they appeared like they'd be easily overpowered. Thirdly, they were strangers, and behaved differently from the natives of the areas. And fourth, they were unsettled, nomadic tent dwellers, like gypsies of our past century and looked down upon as inferiors. So, what hindered the enemies of God's people? It was the Lord's commanding voice. He rebuked the kings for Israel's sake, reprimanding them with a command.